Good morning and afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our webinar on building and scaling a leading recruiting organization. My name is Jason Buss. I'm the head of talent acquisition and workforce strategy at MongoDB and also the founder of the Recruiters Network. We're super excited to have everyone join us today for our webinar. I wanted to start with a quick introduction of the Recruiters Network, as some of you have attended events in person or virtually in the past, and for others, this may be your first. The Recruiters Network was founded in 2011, and our vision is to help advance the talent acquisition profession. We do this through a variety of ways. First is delivering professional development events, and the second is enabling recruiting and HR professionals to expand their networks. We produce a number of events regionally throughout each year. A couple of differences fundamentally between what we do and other events and organizations out there. The first is we don't believe in membership dues. That's so 1980s. The second is we don't believe that any recruiting or HR professional should have to pay $500 or $1,000 or $1,500 and travel to build skills and build their network. So we host a variety of recruiting conferences, meetups, networking events, charitable giving events, and community outreach events regionally throughout the US each year. We have several events currently launched for the upcoming spring season. We're consistently adding new communities throughout the US, and you can learn more about the Recruiters Network by visiting us online at www.recruiters.network. We wouldn't be able to do what we do if it wasn't for our partners who are committed to our vision, and Glassdoor is one of those partners and a sponsor of today's webinar. Glassdoor is obviously a well-known organization in our space, but I wanted to share a couple of interesting statistics about Glassdoor. You may or may not know, Glassdoor currently has over 900,000 employers as part of its platform, and over 47 million reviews, salaries, and insights, as well as 11 million job listings. So I want to again thank Glassdoor and the team for sponsoring today's webinar, and share a couple of quick logistics, and then we'll get started. The webinar today is being recorded. We will be sharing the slides and audio recording with all attendees. We will be having a few minutes at the end for Q&A, so use the Q&A functionality in the webinar to ask any questions that you would like to ask any of our panelists today, and get social and share anything you learn online. Our Twitter handle is Recruit Networks, and the hashtag for today's session is RecNet. So let's get started. Our job as talent acquisition and HR professionals who are involved in recruiting obviously isn't getting any easier. As we shared in the registration, unemployment is at its lowest rate in 50 years, and there's more jobs in the US than there are people to fill them. So our goal today was really to chat with very successful recruiting leaders on a variety of topics to really understand how they think about building and scaling their recruiting organization. So again, we have a great panel assembled for today, and if you join late, again, my name is Jason Buss. I'm the head of recruiting at MongoDB. I'm at this time going to turn it over to our moderator today, a great friend and colleague of many, many years of mine, Tiffany Keel. So Tiffany, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Jason. As he mentioned, my name is Tiffany Keel, and I am currently the Director of HR Search for a search firm in Minneapolis, St. Paul called Verseek Search and Consulting, and also a member of Recruiters Network and the local affiliate here, Minnesota Recruiters. In addition to my activity with recruiting, I also lead the Minnesota Society for Human Resource Management. So I'm the state director for what's called MNSHRM, that state council. Been volunteering and active in the HR and recruiting community here in Minneapolis, St. Paul for well over 20 years. And I'm excited to facilitate and moderate a great discussion today on building and scaling a world-class recruiting organization. And with that, what I would love to do is turn it over to our speakers for them to introduce themselves. So we'll start with a representative from our sponsor today, Glassdoor, Julie Kukulis.
Thank you so much. I'm Julie Kukulis. I head up talent acquisition here at Glassdoor. I am also on the board of the California Recruiters Network, so I get to work closely with Jason and his teams, and very excited to be here today. I have been working in recruiting in the Bay Area for more than 20 years, mostly in technology companies, startups, small, mid-size for the most part. Very excited to be here today.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us today, Julie. And next on our panel of guest speakers today, we have Jeremy Ryder from Google.
Hey everyone, Jeremy Ryder from Google here. Super excited, like Julie, to have a chance to connect with you all. So a little bit about myself. Been in recruiting now for 8+ years. Started recruiting actually in oil and gas down in Houston, Texas, where I'm originally from. Spent many years there recruiting in all various worlds of upstream and downstream. Spent the past 3 years in Madison, Wisconsin, working for Trek Bicycle and leading a team there. And then last year, moved out to the West Coast to work for Google, where I lead a team of about 15 recruiters, and we specifically focus on hiring technical and non-technical program managers for the Google org. So excited to share with you all some of my experiences and hope to take some nuggets away as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. Next on our list, we have Casey Manning Jr. from Kixeye.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm the director of recruiting at Kixeye. I've been in the recruiting industry for about 15+ years in the Bay Area. I'm also a fellow board member of California Recruiters, along with Julie and Jason, and have spent really the last 8 years in the gaming space, and really excited to share some of my insights and some of the exciting times we've had in recruiting in this particular space in this region.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us, Casey. And last but certainly not least, we have Lori Russo from Bottom Line Technologies.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and it's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Lori Russo. I'm at Bottom Line Technologies. I've actually spent Bottom Line for just about 6 months. Prior to that, I spent almost about 7 years at TripAdvisor. Probably the most different thing about me than some of you folks who may have been in talent acquisition for quite some time. I'm probably about 6 years in. I transitioned from digital media at TripAdvisor to leading their global talent acquisition team and kind of being someone that they took out of the business. And I've never looked back, and it's been an amazing run so far. And I look forward to sharing some of those experiences with you guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori, and thank you to all of the panelists. And for those of you that are joining and listening in on today's webinar with Recruiters Network, we are discussing ways of building and scaling a world-class recruiting organization. And if you are active on social, you can follow us at Recruiters Network, as well as use the hashtag RecNet. So we have several questions for conversation today, and we'll be talking with each of our panelists about their experience with building and scaling recruiting organizations. And the first question is specifically around growth and scale. And I want to first talk with Julie about this in particular. So Julie, if you could tell us how you have effectively and efficiently scaled your recruiting capabilities as well as your recruiting team to meet the demands of a growing business.
Absolutely. So first, just for some context, Glassdoor is about 900 people today. So still fairly small, but really looking at growth and scale over the next 3 to 5 years. And so we hire on our team about 450 people a month, and a good number of those, probably about 20% of those, are actually internal moves as well. We do a lot of internal movement on our sales and CS teams, a lot of people moving up and around within the organization, which is wonderful. what we did is our finance team will not give us full budget to like 5x our team, but we were able to increase our team size by just over double in the last year as we prepare for this growth. And then what we really did was added in a lot of tools and resources that we didn't have before. We were still pretty scrappy. Still, we're a little bit older than a traditional startup, but we still acted in that way in some instances. And one of those was really adding in tools and resources to really get to the next level and build in efficiencies in our process, and also build in some employment brand efforts and start building from top of funnel all the way through.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. Very, very helpful information. And I'll pose this same question again about the building of efficiencies and scaling your recruiting capabilities to Jeremy. So Jeremy, if you could kind of provide some insight into how you have worked with your teams to grow and scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. I like this question a lot because I think it's something that we all face to varying degrees. One thing I just wanted to echo what Julie said. I think one of the most important things that I did at my time at Trek, and we're obviously doing at Google as well, is looking into specific tools that can really reduce just the burden of like how much man hours someone's spending doing a task. And so an example would be like scheduling interviews. Another example might be just providing kind of more automated feedback. And in the world of technology, I think it can always be a scary thing. But if you, like Julie said, if you don't have the approval to spend infinite amount of money on hiring very large teams, resources such as tools that can automate certain processes can add a significant value to just being able to free up other time to build candidate relationships and build relationships with the business. Aside from that, one of the things that we're doing at Google is really looking at what is the demand of the business and understanding more specifically like what is the priorities. I'm sure as all recruiters we know that someone says they have an open position, they always want it filled tomorrow, but in reality we all know that's not really possible. But really asking those very thoughtful questions with the business leaders and understanding what are the priorities, and then setting up your team to be able to meet those demands really quickly and then kind of work through the priorities. And what that's allowed us to do essentially is we're not necessarily growing our team, but we're able to deliver on those high impact, high needs to the business. And then as we start meeting those, then we're able to reallocate our resources to be able to focus on other things. Additionally, one other point I'll make here is just looking at like where is your time spent? And so maybe it's our recruiters who should be really working with their businesses and with our candidates are spending so much time in LinkedIn on a daily basis. Maybe you should look at building out a sourcing team who can spend more time gathering candidate profiles and doing those initial touch points. Or maybe they're spending more time focusing on scheduling interviews and administrative tasks. And so it might be a good option to be able to add to your team in those particular areas. And again, allowing people to focus on specific things, which is going to add more longer-term value.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And it sounds like both of you with your efforts and your recruiting teams and what you're doing is connected obviously directly to the business. And as your businesses and the operations in your businesses grow, change, evolve, want to kind of go off of that and talk next about business impact. So not just the fact that you're modeling your recruiting after what's going on in the business, but also want to talk about how what you are doing is directly impacting the business. So we'll start this question with Casey. So Casey, because recruiting does have a significant outcome on the success of the business, there are things that we need to do to be able to showcase talent acquisition and recruiting and staffing in our businesses. So what have you been able to do to showcase your efforts in your business?
Great, thanks for the question, Tiffany. Some of the things we've done here at KickSci to showcase, the recruiting impact on the organization is really pull back the mystery of the recruiting process and share that with our, business leaders and our partners. Now, within gaming, we support various studios, and they're generally at different stages in the production cycle. And often we see that, one particular studio will be, succeeding from a revenue growth perspective, and one other will be, maybe struggling or have challenges to hit those particular, KPIs. So when we see that delta between similarly structured organizations, we will basically share the impact of recruiting on the development process, and how, if there's a need to, say, shrink costs by optimizing, headcount plans, we can easily communicate, the metrics from our recruiting process of, here is the time to hire on this particular candidate, or here's the time to hire in this particular high impact position. It allows our business leaders to effectively kind of predict and scale their particular businesses to meet their revenue growth needs, while incorporating, the staffing and recruiting process into their overall plans. Previously some organizations would separate that, but by being true talent partners and, aligning our efforts with their interests, it does lead to sustainable growth across the organization as a whole, and really does illustrate how we can be true partners in the overall organizational goals.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Casey. And I love the talent partner, much like we've been evolving the HR manager role into HR business partner, and really sitting side by side with business leaders. And then also taking that into the talent acquisition role. I love that transition that we're making and becoming true talent advisors and business partners. So the same question over to you, Jeremy. So what have you been able to showcase in your organization with regard to the success of the recruiting changes and things that you've done to scale your recruiting team?
For sure. Well, one thing I loved what Casey said is pulling back the curtain, or as I like to say, just kind of demystifying the recruiting process. And I think it's one of the things that's often overlooked is just the complexity that can come with recruiting. And so just being able to tell that story in a very transparent way, and just informing leadership of, what are the challenges that you're facing, and not in a way that, of course, is complaining or is showing that we can't succeed because of these problems, but rather, hey, here's what the marketplace is like, right? The unemployment is very low. So here's the challenges that we're facing, and here are some of the things that we're doing to be able to tackle those particular problems. And that just, I think, really creates that talent advisor piece that you just mentioned, Tiffany, of being able to be transparent and show the way of what's going on specifically. In addition to that, I really spend a lot of times just showing metrics of what's being successful, what's not. So some of the things that we're always looking at is what is the latency, or what is the delay throughout the recruiting process, and being able to show that oftentimes there might be a process, or there might be a team, or there might be something else completely different that is slowing down the process and might be causing us to lose candidates or not be as competitive, or maybe this is an area of the business where we need to invest in some talent. And then we can tie that back to, if these are problems that we can solve together as a team, we should hypothetically, right, of course, assuming it's fixed, be able to deliver more through that. In addition to that, I like to take this one back to my team as well, is being able to say, like, here's the value that, as a recruiting team, that we add to the business. An example would be that if we're able to hire these 10 engineers, we're able to hire these 10 developers, here's the next project that we might be able to deliver. Here's the next technology we might be able to create for the world. This might be the next bicycle that we can develop for the cycling community, whatever that may be. Because I think it's always super important too to show the value to the recruiting team of what is the value, what is the impact they're making back to the business as well.
Excellent, really great examples. And both of you gentlemen talked a little bit about some of the metrics. So specifically with time to hire or time to fill, and then in a past life I called the delays drag time. So how much time is it taking for managers to respond to me or to my team once I've provided them with data or information or candidates? So let's talk a little bit more about the impact. So Lori, specifically, I want to ask you this question. So tell me about some of the unique ways that you're using data and analytics and metrics to show the value that you and your team are providing your organization.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the examples is specific to TripAdvisor. When I had first taken over talent acquisition, the engineering team was in the mindset that we should use every agency that's willing to submit engineering talent. And so you can imagine what that might mean for the recruiting team. And what I was able to do was influence hiring managers by showcasing that internal recruiters could deliver quality hires at the same rate or better than external agencies by focusing on quality at the top of the funnel versus just quantity. And so we had over 100 agencies submitting candidates on a daily basis. And what I did was we separated the team to kind of be more of an inbound versus outbound, so kind of a test and control group, and had folks just focus on passively sourcing candidates with, but still being full cycle recruiters, but not focusing on any applicants or agency submitted candidates, and really show that they could still deliver scale and hire at the rate we needed them to without the need of 100+ agencies. And in turn, we also were able to calculate the amount of engineering hours we gave back to the business because they weren't spending that time focusing on like reviewing resumes or doing tech screens on just a number of candidates. They were really focusing on just the quality folks that we were to spend our time with. It was a significant change management process.
Yeah, I bet. Love that though. Love it. And I'll pose the same question to you, Julie, with regard to the data and analytics and the information that you're using to show the business that what you're doing is making an impact on what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'm still reeling from the 100 agencies submitting resumes regularly. That sounds like so much work. When I joined Glassdoor about 1.5 years ago, we didn't really think about data in our work. The team wasn't of that mindset yet and didn't really understand how to do it first. And definitely we weren't using that muscle yet, but we worked through kind of teaching them how to do it. And of course you can start with very simple types of data that you're analyzing, looking at your funnel and your time in stages and how many candidates it takes to get to offer, right? How many candidates do you need to touch at the beginning to be able to get those offers at the back end? And one of the things I started working with my team on was the idea that you go through your work every day and you're probably going to start with a hypothesis about, I think that my team is taking too long to get candidates through the process. It may be that same exercise that you did in the past, but now let's put data behind it. So have your hypothesis, let's go hunt for the data, now come back and tell the story with the data attached. And it resonates so much more with our leaders. They use data. At Glassdoor, we use data for everything. So the business is used to having that mindset, that data mindset in everything that we do when we talk about our customers, when we talk about reviews and things like that. And so by using that type of a mindset with our teams, it gives us so much more credibility, and they're really able to take our advice and do things the way that we would like to do them. For example, if we wanted to reduce agencies, we now have the data to show them why that's important. I love that last example, by the way.
That's fabulous. Love that. So what I hear everyone saying, in particular, Lori and Julie, taking the data and the metrics and the analytics and converting that into business terms to say, yeah, we're business partners here too, and we're helping you meet your business goals and objectives, and here's proof. And we can also help advise, coach, and counsel when it comes to talent management within your business. So great work. Thank you for sharing that. And just a quick reminder for those on the line, if you are active out on social, Recruiting Network or Recruiter Network has a Twitter handle called Recruit Network or @RecruitNetworks, and you can use the hashtag RecNet. And we will be offering the slides after the session, and the session is recorded for playback after we are done. So the next question gets at the traits of best recruiters. So when we are looking to build out our team and we want those talent advisors and we want someone who can be a talent partner, we're looking for what 2 or 3 characteristics. So Casey, I'll let you lead off with this question. So when you think about your successful recruiters and teams that you've led, what are 2 or 3 traits that you have noticed that you now look for when you are hiring additional recruiters?
Great, thanks for the question again. Kind of building off Lori and Julie's answers about analytics and metrics, there are 3 things I look for that tie directly into that. Number 1 is grit or stress tolerance. Number 2 is analytical ability, and number 3 would be probably empathy. And I'll start with the grit piece. It's really important, I think, for recruiters to have a high degree of stress tolerance, not necessarily for negative stress, but just from the idea that when dealing with people, pretty much anything can happen, and to stay focused on the goal. Our goal as recruiters is to move candidates through a hiring process so they can either attain their dream job, and so the hiring manager can obtain their dream employee. And we have to support both sides of that process very closely to ensure that there's comfort throughout the process, given the concerns that a candidate may have if they're moving towns or changing jobs is very stressful, and the idea of a hiring manager adding someone new to their team and all the additional work that comes with that. Kind of leading into the analytics part, being able to communicate those objective aspects of the process, things like time to hire to the hiring manager, but also the full life cycle of the recruiting process to the candidate, so they aren't concerned about where they are in the process, and so they're fully aware of what the outcome will be. And finally, empathy. You need empathy to put yourself in the shoes of the individuals that you're supporting. Again, kind of going back to the idea of removing the mystery of the hiring process to both candidate and hiring manager or business client is extremely helpful in being able to speed the process when it slows down, or slow the process when other things might take importance, and keeping everyone on the same page, because generally having clarity will lead to the best outcome and really optimize the experience for everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. I love that. Love it. Grit and empathy for sure. Lori, same question for you. As you're looking at candidates for your recruiting roles, what are some of the things that you're looking for as standout characteristics?
Yeah, Casey, I could not agree with you more on grit and empathy. I mean, when folks kind of say, like, Lori, what is the most difficult part of your job? Quite frankly, I would say finding amazing recruiters. Because I think that the role today requires such a diverse skill set, and you need to have great, and I like to say, like, tenacious. You can never give up, both on kind of inside the business with hiring managers and influencing leaders, but also in the market. It is a really difficult market, so you need to be tenacious. You need to have those conversations. You need to be able to story tell. And I think back to the comment around needing to influence and you need to be influential. You need to influence, and quite frankly, it's such an emotional. Folks often think of kind of the people operations or the people success team as kind of this more emotional team. So recruiting is emotional, but at the end of the day, we can back everything up with data. So recruiters who can influence with data, I feel, will win. And so the ability to be comfortable with using data to influence leaders and hiring managers internal. And then I had written down to myself compassion or empathy as well. You need to care about both the hiring manager and teams that you're looking to go and find great talent for, and you also need to care about the candidates that you're speaking with, what motivates them, what's important to them. Just because they may have all of the skill in the world and could come in and, and kick butt, it doesn't mean that it might be the right choice for them at that time. And you need to be really thoughtful and empathetic to a situation and help navigate that with both the hiring managers and the candidates.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. Wonderful insights. You've mentioned the ability to be a storyteller. And I think that goes a long way when it comes to, talking a little bit about the team that is looking to hire, and that extends out into the organization. So want to talk a little bit about employer branding and differentiation and how we go about telling our story. So Julie, I'll turn it back over to you. So I'm especially as we're looking at really, really low unemployment rates and tight labor markets, what are some of the things that you have done to build your employer brand and work with your recruiting teams to build your brand and differentiate your organization from all the others that are competing for the same talent?
It's really interesting because we're Glassdoor, and our company was started to be an employer branding mechanism for companies, right? We want everybody to have reviews up there and work on your employer center. And when I got here, what I quickly realized is that a lot of people went to Glassdoor on a regular basis, but didn't necessarily think about working at Glassdoor. So it was funny when I first started proposing that we need to do more work in this area to our exec team, I definitely got some pushback. What do you mean? We are an employer brand company. That's what we do. But we have been working, and again, I think I mentioned this earlier on, that we have a fairly limited budget. We're not able to add as much as we want. So we don't necessarily have an employer brand person yet on our team, or a team that some companies have. So we started with recruiters who are the best at being social and going out and putting posts out there. We started using a hashtag #LoveYourJob in all of our Glassdoor posts that we put out there. We're most recently, I know tools is a big subject for today, we most recently just signed up with a new company called Altru Labs that has employee testimonial social videos that you can embed on your careers page or push out in social and different messaging. So we started using that, and we're really excited about that. And then we're partnering, with our marketing team as well, that again has limited resources and limited bandwidth. They're wonderful, but we try to capitalize on their capabilities whenever we can. And whether it's just getting an image that we can use to post our jobs out there in a bigger way, or partnering with them on different efforts. We're sort of starting small and then hoping to get bigger and bigger over time with employment brand.
And I think that, Julie, that last comment you made is critical. So a lot of times when people identify that they need to focus on employer brand, they want to do everything all at once, when really you want to start small and then grow it. So choose a platform, choose one message, and then build from there. So I think that's a huge, huge bit of advice. So thank you for sharing that. With regard to employer branding and differentiation, also want to have Jeremy chime in on that question. So what are some of the things that you've done throughout your career, not necessarily, only in your current role, but throughout your experience where you've had the opportunity to build out an employer brand and differentiate your employer?
Yeah, for sure. I wish I had way more time to talk about this one, as I'm sure Julie did as well. But just jumping into the specifics there, really going back to my time at Trek, just because I had a lot more influence on it there. Really just took a look at how to this question of how do we differentiate ourselves, and we ultimately realized that we wanted to just leverage our culture as much as we could in all of our employer branding. So what I did is actually sat down with the larger HR team, and we identified, I think at the time, 25 individuals within the organization that had grown within the organization, that were doing exceptional work, or had a really cool story to tell. And then what we did is we actually went and interviewed all those individuals, took pictures. Some of them we did video, others we did audio, And then we basically took those stories and then we started doing bi-weekly posts on LinkedIn at the time through sponsored updates. But basically, we just very consistently and every 2 weeks posted posted one of their stories, and then we used that and specifically targeted individuals in the marketplace that kind of worked in that particular job family. And also, as an aside, we were strategic in the sense that we knew we were going to be growing in retail or engineering or software development, whatever. And so our stories were kind of matching along with what we were trying to recruit for. And we looked at what the other organizations were doing and just said we wanted to kind of mimic that. But ultimately, our goal was to just have a super strong employment for him there. In addition to that, we actually did take a lot of that information and cross-posted it on Glassdoor as well. But that was one of the probably the biggest wins that we had. And we looked at our metrics year over year. And just by doing that one thing, our employment brand, the people interacting with our posts and everything else, just I think it was almost like 400x every year because one, the consistency, the quality of the information, et cetera, really grew that. And then aside from that, we also just looked at everything that we did from interactions with our candidates, from how they interacted with our career site, how they interacted with the emails that they were sent with, any and every touch point that a candidate had with our brands and with our employment brand. We made sure that we were telling some form of story, we had some form of consistency through that. And so one, I think it just created nice overall consistency across the entire application process. But it was always just kind of re-emphasizing the brand and the culture of the company that we were in.
Incredible. Thank you. Lots and lots of stuff going on in your life, Jeremy. Thank you. As we talk about kind of all of these different questions, we talked about growth and scale, the impact that our efforts have on the business, the metrics, the data and analytics, traits of best recruiters, or how we differentiate. Want to also talk a little bit about tools. So lots of buzz over the last 5, 6+ years and beyond about artificial intelligence and business intelligence and data and analytics. So I do want to talk about favorite tools, and we do have one question specifically, and Julie, this is a question back to you. So getting back to kind of that first question, what tools did you use to scale, or what specific resources did you deploy in order to, impact that growth and scale of your business?
So one of the first tools that we started using as we started thinking about efficiencies in our process is we started using a video interviewing tool called SparkHire. And what we wanted to do, the goal was that if we think about certain high volume roles, we might spend 30 minutes each on initial phone interviews with candidates. And so if you start adding those up, recruiters are spending days and days on their initial phone interviews to get to that first pool of candidates. And so we implemented video interviewing specifically in some of our sales and CS roles to start, where candidates could, on their own schedule, go ahead and record a few answers to some questions and get through some of those first initial phone interviews. What we did to make it more Glassdoor friendly and more friendly in general was we recorded on both sides. So we recorded us doing an intro and an outro video and also asking the questions. We also involved managers, so they would start to sort of get to know the team on a first phone call, if you will, with this video interviewing. And we found some huge success in terms of moving things through more quickly. The experience seems to be working really well for candidates as well. They can get through the process faster than they would have before. And the recruiters are able to spend more focused time, as we've talked about earlier, focused with the areas that they really want to be involved with, partnering with managers and really spending more quality time in their process.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that, Julie. Sticking with the theme of tools, I want to ask the panelists what some of your favorite tools are, or some of the favorite recruiting things that your team is currently using. So Casey, what are you guys working on right now, or what tools have you recently acquired that you are absolutely loving at the moment?
Sure. Thanks again for the question, Tiffany. I'll I hate to admit I'm a bit old school, and given at least Kickstarter's specific focus on international expansion right now, a tool that I'm really loving is Skype, because it's stable and it connects pretty much everyone on the planet. So that's specific to me. Yet I'll pivot and say that a really effective tool that we use internally here is called a CoderPad. And it may be something that recruiters out there are utilizing. Yet CoderPad makes it really easy to compile and run code in extremely popular programming languages. So we are able to have live code tests and couple that with phone interviews. So in the past, we would have, say, like a hiring manager phone interview, and they would say, this candidate's strong, let's give them a code test. They do a take-home test. It takes 24 to 48 hours, depending on their personal schedule. And then maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, but always felt like this roll of the dice, after you've had a great, maybe culture conversation, or they're able to speak to some aspects of programming that we felt they'd be good enough to move to the next step, and then everything would fall apart when they would do the take-home test. With CoderPad, it's actually a real-time kind of coding presentation with a hiring manager. So we take a process that might be extended to 72 hours, in some cases to 45 minutes, because the hiring manager is able to have the standard phone screen of your motivation, et cetera, but then also in real time assess one's coding expertise, which has really allowed us to kind of accelerate the process, especially with analytics hires. So for me, CoderPad has been a tool that has been extremely effective.
Very cool. And we didn't necessarily mean brand new tools. It could be new to you tools too. So Skype is cool as well. Lori, same question for you. Tools that your team is currently using that you are absolutely loving.
So I would say right now my team is just loving Greenhouse which is not really a tool, but I would say that's our current state. Before I joined, we're not leveraging an ATS, and you can imagine what that might feel like. So right now the team is just loving Greenhouse and then working through some integrations. I would say a tool that I am interested in exploring and testing for a subset of the hires we make, and we make them at scale. They're high attrition, and we hire quite a lot of them, is Textio. I'm really interested in leveraging that technology for a very young kind of entry level kind of pre-sales force that we're looking to bring on.
Great, thank you. And another topic, in addition to tools and resources, especially in our world in staffing, talent acquisition, recruiting, is candidate experience. So everyone talks the talk, and research shows the best of the best walk the talk. So what's something unique that you've piloted or that you've implemented that relates to an exceptional candidate experience? And Jeremy, we'll start with you on the candidate experience component of your process.
Yeah, for sure. Again, another topic I'd love to spend hours talking about. But one of the things that we do at Google that I absolutely love is our recruiters are actually measured from a goals perspective, which is tied back into performance, is actually on the candidate experience. And the reason I like that is that it really kind of forces all of us, myself included, to be very mindful of that experience. And so ultimately what happens is whenever a candidate goes through the process, at the end, let's say they receive an offer and start with Google, or for whatever reason they aren't selected for a role, they're sent a survey, and then that survey is responded to if they choose to do so, and then we get those scores on the back end. And so we're very quickly able to determine, one, are we creating great experiences? Maybe are there gaps within our process that we're unaware of that we need to look to fix? Then it's also just keeping it top of mind for all of our recruiters that if they're not being successful in this particular world, there's going to be some negative consequences because of that. And I think it's important to make that top of mind especially with an organization like Google where we're competing with just everyone else as well, to really create great experiences. What we did at Shrek was we didn't goal people there because I just didn't have the idea, but we really just looked at the whole process. What were the touch points? If they flew in for an interview, we made sure that they had like special treats or swag at the hotel. So they just felt like we were being mindful of them throughout the process. Just knowing that interviewing is a really like scary, nerve-wracking thing, and so whatever you can do just to diffuse that some way somehow was always top of mind. So I'll stop there. There were just a few of the things that we've done, but there's millions of other things that we kind of explored along the way.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that insight, Jeremy. And the same question for you, Casey, with regard to exceptional candidate experience, some of the things that you and your team are doing.
Great, thanks again for the question, Tiffany. And I want to kind of build off of what Jeremy said a little bit with the million little things. So something that well, I guess I'll go backwards a bit and say a philosophy that we adopted with the candidate experience here is some advice I received years ago, which was treating every candidate experience as if you're planning a wedding. Where if you've ever planned a wedding or kind of planned an event for family, it really is a million little things. You're thinking about every single aspect of the day and how it should go and where it should flow and who should be where and what should happen when they're where they need to be. And kind of apply that to the team to really philosophize on this is the type of experience we should be delivering to our candidates. And again, as Jeremy said, interviewing is a scary experience, especially if you're traveling and you're making these huge decisions. So we try and we would basically break down every aspect of the interviewing process and integrate some sort of touch point that recruiting could influence to ensure the candidate that not only did the team they're interviewing with cared about them and were interested in considering them, but that they had the support from the recruiting and maybe adjacently the HR team throughout this process. At the end of the day, we wanted to have the decision to hire the candidate be, our decision. That might sound a bit selfish, but we wanted every candidate to leave our organization wanting to work here. And part of that was, delivering on those touch points through every aspect of the process, ensuring that they had access to, say, the entire interview panel, or they had access to the entire recruiting team, or that if they wanted to speak with, leadership or the finance team about how their package would be structured, that we carved out time and worked with those teams to be available to do that. And that's really led to, with some surveys that we would send out, quarterly to see what our candidate experience and if we were improving on that. We were able to see results on that and able to, kind of continually improve on that process to ensure that each experience, even though based on a process that was repeated, felt individuated to the candidates that were considering working with us.
Really good. Thank you so much, Casey. Love the candidate experience. And it's amazing to me how many people thank us when we actually tell them that they're not getting the job or not moving forward, because so many people are not closing that loop and thinking of the recruiting process from the candidate's perspective. Final question before we get into some additional questions and closing comments is about interview methodologies. And we talked a little bit about what it takes to be a solid recruiter. What are the key skills that you're looking for, such as grit, empathy, the ability to influence, tenacity. So we have a question specifically with regard to that. So if we could go back to Casey, you talked about grit and empathy. What are some of the key or core questions you use when you're recruiting recruiters to get at that grit and empathy?
Sure. Thanks again, Tiffany. So one question we ask, and I'll go back a little bit, we have a structured interview process here, and we ask a few questions around stress tolerance to recruiters specifically. And the one question we ask is having them give us a situation or telling us about a time they were pulled in multiple directions, and how did they handle it? And we leave it broad because recruiters are always pulled in multiple directions, but understanding how an individual would not only set up that situation, whether it's, I had a candidate on site, or say I had 3 candidates on site, and during that time, a C-level executive, needed an immediate report for the board meeting while I was managing 3 candidates, how did you, kind of prioritize not only responding to these multiple people that needed your attention, but then how did you kind of close the loop with everybody? Or if there was a conflict, how did you communicate what was actually happening, and how kind of open and honest were you, not with yourself, but with the situation to kind of solve the problem? So that's definitely one question we ask. And an additional question we ask beyond that is around initiative, having someone describe a time where they took initiative to act rather than waiting to be told what to do, knowing how independent the process can be from normal business operations. We look for recruiters who kind of take the initiative to close the loop again with their business partners or with their candidates to kind of ensure that the process continues to move, and that speed and efficacy are kind of paramount to the success of the organization, especially when it comes to recruiting, so that we sustain that communication loop and that communication flow.
Great. Thank you, Casey. And Lori, I want to pose the same question to you. As you talked about recruiters being storytellers and influencers, what's a question that is your go-to question when you're interviewing a recruiter candidate?
Sorry about that. Taking you off of mute. So for storytellers, I always like to ask them how they work with hiring managers during their alignment meeting. So are they spending time with hiring managers to align the role? I like to ask them what questions that they're asking hiring managers to learn about the profile of the person. I'm really looking for, are they only looking for kind of skill and ability, or are they actually taking the time to understand, what does that empty seat mean for the business? If I fill that seat, what impact will that have on your team? So understanding the business rationale of, finding the most amazing person for, the sales team. And, I want to know just what they're willing, to dig, and how tenacious are they to understand that it's not just a skill match. It really matters. And by asking those questions, you're able to deliver a story to candidates who aren't in market. They want to know about the team, the impact, the people. And if you don't know that, you're not going to be able to get that person excited.
Great. And on the flip side of that, Lori, when you're not the interviewer, but you're helping to lead and guide the interview and selection process, what are you doing to ensure that hiring managers are being effective in their recruitment process?
And so this was actually one of my, I would say, favorite projects at both TripAdvisor and at Bottom Line, which was, how do we as an organization have confidence that we are aligned globally on what great looks like for, and then insert your company name, so for TripAdvisor or Bottom Line. And what we did was held some focus groups, kind of tops down, bottoms up approach to help define what those principles are around who and how we hire. And then we also created attributes of highly successful people within our organization. So what are those attributes that they demonstrate, that high performance demonstrate within our organization? And then we articulated what those attributes looked like as if it was written evidence coming out of an interview. Because so often someone can say, well, we look for the fast learner. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean? What does that look like if you're going to articulate that in written evidence? Because I might think that might be something than what you think, Tiffany. So let's help people understand what that looks like. And so we took those principles around who and how we hire, as well as the attributes, and we infused them into interviewer, I like calling it more hiring workshop, that's very customized both to, we did it for TripAdvisor, and then I've done it at Bottom Line. And then we went and did a kind of the global roadshow and interviewed kind of the TripAdvisor way or the Bottom Line way, and helped provide that alignment. And it was incredibly well received. We're just starting to see some of the data come through at Bottom Line and how it's helping kind of that quality of hire, making sure we're hiring the best for our company and not just someone who might be great somewhere else.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. At this point, I would like to open it up to the audience to ask any additional questions that you have. And reminder, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen or the chat box. Feel free to address any questions that you have there. And while we wait for one or two questions to come through, I do have one for Jeremy. So wondering what the biggest challenges you are currently facing in your business are. So from a talent acquisition, staffing planning, succession planning, talent management, what are some of the biggest challenges you have going on?
Oh man, that's a big question. Yeah, fair one. I think actually, ironically, one of the challenges we're facing right now is resourcing our team. We're growing, right, and recruiters are in high demand, and so I love just hearing some of the feedback that you all had around hiring your team. Because I think it always is a challenge to hire a really great recruiter. So I love that. I think the other one is specifically maybe to us and others, but how do we really hire at scale with meaning hiring loads of individuals, but then also being mindful of diversity and inclusion, which everyone's facing a similar challenge, right? I know we're not unique in that, but really just getting the buy-in from leadership to make sure that we're having representative pipelines, making sure that we're still meeting the demands of the business and being able to negotiate kind of that trade-off. And so I think for us, that's a really big one. And again, I know others are wrestling through that at the same time. But for us, just building kind of the strategies and the plans to be able to execute on that exceptionally well. And so I'm looking forward to kind of by the end of this year, one, hoping that the rest of my team is staffed fully, but then we're able to deliver some inclusive or some diversity hires, but then also to meet the demands of the business as well.
Great. And we have time here for one question. So specifically with regard to sourcing, so a couple of questions have come through about the recruiting of recruiters, effective sourcing tools. So how do you attract the right sort of candidate to ensure that you've got the right candidate profile for the right position versus getting dozens upon dozens of candidates who are not qualified? So Julie, I'll leave that question with you. So what are you doing to attract the right sort of candidate?
Well, definitely we always think about directing candidates to look at reviews, because we think that informed candidates will be the best candidates in the process. But we're trying with some of our employment brand efforts, with some blog posts and articles that we write about different groups, to talk about what it's like to work on a particular team so that we can get the right types of people applying for the right jobs.
Great. We've covered a lot of ground today: growth and scale, business impact, data and analytics, employer branding, a lot of different tools, and candidate experience. So thank you, Julie, Jeremy, Casey, and Lori, and thanks to Glassdoor for sponsoring. And with that, Jason, I will turn it back over to you for closing comments.
Yeah, thanks again, Tiffany, so much for your time and for all of our panelists taking time out of their day to share all their insights related to building and scaling a successful recruiting organization. We sincerely appreciate it. Again, thank you to Glassdoor for sponsoring the Recruiters Network and our webinar today. We did not get time for all of the Q&A, so our commitment is we do have the Q&A. We will work on getting responses to those questions from the panelists to you. So that's everything that we had planned for today. Again, you can learn more about Recruiters Network and our upcoming events on our website, recruiters.network. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and happy hunting.